Happy holidays, everybody. I'm Jason Perlow, and this is my colleague, Jason Cipriani, and we're here to talk about the tech CEOs that are getting called for Christmas.
Oh man, we have some good ones too. They definitely have earned, there are some CEOs this year that have earned coal. It's not just been bad. They've been, I guess you would say, naughty, Jason?
Yeah, extremely naughty, badly behaving. And as we know, when you behave bad, you get coal for Christmas. All right. So why don't we just get it right off the bat? Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook.
Yeah, he shouldn't even make a Christmas list like at all. For the past, 5 years, he probably has gotten coal. He's definitely getting extra scoops of coal this year. Let's just look at Facebook as a whole.
He's getting his own mine. He's getting his own coal mountain this year.
He is getting the mountain, yeah. I hope he, enjoys it. Facebook has had a rough few years. There was the Cambridge Analytica stuff of last year. This year, he has stood on stage in front of us, told us privacy matters, the future is private, Facebook cares about privacy. Yeah, time and time again, repeatedly, Facebook has proven in their actions, not their words, privacy means very little to the company, and thus Mark Zuckerberg. And then you add in the fact that we have an election year coming up. In the last few months, we've seen political ads become a hot topic for social networks. And what's Facebook's stance on political ads? They don't fact check them. Anybody could buy a political ad that has a false, blatant lie in it, and Facebook thinks it's up to the reader to determine whether or not it is a proper ad. I can't wrap my head around it. I've tried. I just don't understand it. What do you think, Jason?
Well, I think, it's interesting, they do this thing with the fake news verification or fake news reports on news sources, right? So, if you click the little I button, you can see if there have been any reports of fake news by the outlet producing the content. So I'm surprised that they don't do this for political ads.
It would only make sense.
Yeah, I think that the first time that there's going to be an ad with a major lie in it and it backfires on them, they're going to end up having to put something up like that.
Oh, they've had them. They've already had them. I think Elizabeth Warren took it out in an ad right after they announced what this policy was that was completely false. I think it was about Mitch McConnell or maybe even President Trump. And it was a flat out lie, and Facebook refused to pull the ad down. And so she proved her point. This is profits over everything else. That's all this is.
You know what? I mean, Twitter's on our lists this year as well, but at least they decided to pull political ads entirely from their platform.
They're not going to allow them. But you're right. Jack Dorsey, you're getting coal this year.
And he is getting coal, and it's not because of political ads. It's because of Nazis.
Yeah, bullying, harassment, and just the proliferation of nationalists, all that stuff on his platform that he has.
Flat out crazies allowing to take control of his platform.
Yeah, in the argument of free speech, which, fortunately, I'm lucky enough. I have not been a target of any online harassment, especially on Twitter. But I know people who have, and it's been devastating. And
I've gotten my share, for sure.
Well, I mean, I get a few random messages, but not to the extreme that I've seen other people. And Twitter, you report a tweet where someone is threatening you and your family and, this doesn't violate our terms. And that's specifically what we're talking about here. They fail to draw hard lines in the sand to say what is and isn't allowed on the platform. And I guess we could kind of extend that on to their policy for world leaders as well, who are allowed to make very empty or very vague threats, but still threats nonetheless, without, any sort of repercussion. And if I had any advice to Twitter and Mr. Dorsey, it would be have a spine. Let's get this stuff off the platform and make it a safer, healthier place for everyone to interact. It hasn't been good for Twitter for the last couple of years.
Yeah, the only thing is that, it's one thing to kick off people with a couple dozen followers, but if you start kicking off people with 67 million followers, that has an impact to their bottom line. So, I mean, they have to think about, is it in their interest to be good and to get these jerks off their platform and lose some money in the process initially for the long term, have a healthy platform. So I hope at some point, Jack comes to his senses, but in the meantime, he's getting his own mountain of coal this year as well.
Oh, so he's upgraded to a mountain. Him and Zuckerberg definitely have earned mountains. Now, the next one on our list, I'm not sure he earns a mountain, but it's starting to pile up, and that is Alphabet CEO, newly titled Alphabet CEO, Sundar Pichai. And that is, he just recently got a promotion. He was Google CEO for the last few years. He has now taken over Alphabet, which oversees Google. What's been going on with Google and under his watch?
Oh my gosh. Well, Google got the #1 position in our tech turkeys this year.
They did.
For a lot of different reasons. Now, forget the smartphone snafus with the Pixel 4. That's either near or there. It's a tiny market share for them, and regardless. The real issue with Google is privacy. Especially, when they announced that Project Nightingale thing, about how they're hoovering tens of millions of records from a hospital network that they're in partnership with not even notifying the patients that they're doing
right.
it, is absolutely the capital E in evil. I don't know what happened to Don't Be Evil. They got rid of it out of their corporate,
Oh yeah, they removed it. They realized where they were headed and they took it out.
Yeah, they got rid of it. And now look, they're spending over $2 billion, almost $3 billion on Fitbit, which has got I don't know how many millions of users. And I would be generally worried if I was a Fitbit user that Google now has stewardship of this data. Who knows what they're going to do with it,
Right. Yeah, and for me personally, I think putting Sundar on the list was more about how Google has responded to employee pushback on some of these projects. They've worked with the Department of Defense on some stuff. And more recently, I think just last week, they made the news for firing an engineer for letting people know that they're allowed to unionize and
Yep.
letting employees know just by creating a Chrome extension and pushing an alert. Look, if your original ethos was to not be evil or don't be evil, and you removed it, there's some serious issues there, but you're continuing down the path proving that you truly meant to remove it, and it's not a good look for anyone. And like you said, the whole health data alone is scary. Like, the last company I want to have my health data is Facebook, but the next one is Google. I just don't want them to have all my health records. So it's a well-deserved, well-earned stack of coal for Sundar, but hopefully it stops there. And next year we don't have them on the list with a mountain like Dorsey and Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I mean, Google's such a huge player. They got their hands on so many things, especially IoT. They broke They broke their Works with Nest stuff this year, and it was a mess. But the real IoT failure, in my opinion, this year was Ring CEO Jaime Siminoff.
Yeah,
that thing with the police department. That's ridiculous.
Forget the police department. Look, Ring has been in the news probably every week, negatively in the news probably every week of 2019. This has been a horrible year PR-wise for Ring, and they've earned every inch of coverage for it. So it was revealed, I think our sister site CNET is the one who broke the story the first time, that Ring was working with police departments around the country to provide footage from doorbell cameras, the floodlight cameras and everything else to the police departments to help them track down thieves. Just this last week, it was discovered there was a ring, no pun intended, of hackers who were using credentials from previous breaches to access Ring users' cameras and then talk to scare little people. There was an 8-year-old girl in her bedroom. Her parents had just installed a new camera that was playing with her toys, and then all of a sudden a random stranger starts talking to her. Now, reusing credentials, that's its own problem. Yeah. There's stuff Ring could do in the interim to prevent that, right? They know what's leaked in these breaches. They can run that database against their database and see whose passwords have likely been compromised. They could force users to use two-factor authentication. There's plenty of steps they could take to make their platform more secure, in addition to quit working with police departments. Quit, or be more transparent about exactly what's going on, because every step of the way they've denied it.
Or if you want police departments to have access to your data, they should be opt-in or opt-out if you don't want to be able to have them have access to that.
You know, when these stories first started coming out, it was kind of wishy-washy whether it was opt-in or not. And the more that comes out, the more reporters are able to dig and uncover. It kind of feels like maybe it's not fully opt-out anymore. It's or opt-in. It's you have to opt out.
So who's next on our list? Well, I have to, maybe not necessarily a CEO, but he is a very important figure in the free software community. I don't want to say open source because he gets angry if you use the word open source, but yes, the GPL license, which is the basis of Linux, Android, and a lot of other things. Also the GNU toolkits that are the basis of Linux and everything, and every major modern operating system that we use for software development and all that stuff in the cloud. Richard M. Stallman, always was a kind of an odd guy to begin with, but his defense of Epstein was absolutely abysmal and did force him to resign. The backlash from him doing that forced him to resign from the Free Software Foundation. I do believe he's still in charge of the GNU project, software development project itself, but the guy had to resign in disgrace. I don't think anybody can possibly defend his actions, no matter what you feel about open source and his contributions to those things.
Yeah, I agree. When you offered to put him on the list, I admittedly had no clue who it was. So in doing my research and reading some interviews he had done that led up to him having to step down, I was pretty appalled by some of the things he said as far as minors and explicit photos go and all that.
It shocked the hell out of me. I mean,
definitely there's some coal, and there's no place for that at all. And I'll just leave
it. We should take that as an example that none of that is acceptable in any industry, let alone the tech industry.
Agree, 100%.
Far less an egregious thing, but still, I'm very disappointed at him. Tim Apple.
Yeah, Tim Apple, you're getting some coal.
Tim Apple is getting some very serious call for his toadying performance in front of the President of the United States and his tour of the quote-unquote new Mac Pro factory in Texas. There was no need for that whatsoever.
So Apple CEO Tim Cook was called Tim Apple by President Trump at one point. I don't remember if it was in an interview or on Twitter. So Tim Apple has become his new name. So a couple weeks ago, the Mac Pro started shipping. This is a huge computer that many in the many in the video, editing industry have been waiting for. It began shipping here in the U.S., actually across the world, but in the U.S. specifically, it is built in a factory in Austin, Texas. Well, President Trump took a tour of that factory alongside Tim Cook, and then at the end held a press conference where President Trump declared that factory was just newly opened and was producing the Mac Pros. The truth is, that factory's been in existence since 2013?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. It's not owned by Apple. It's ran by a contract manufacturer and has nothing to do with President Trump, his policies, or any of the trade war tariff stuff, which is what this all comes down to. Tim Cook, Apple as a whole, did not issue a correction at all. Not even after the press event occurred. There wasn't a press release coming out saying, hey, actually, just so you know, this factory wasn't brand new. We didn't do anything today that was as great as it was played off. But I think it was trying to get Trump on their side to work with them on the tariff relief for the iPhone, which I think 2 weeks later was set to go up $115 per iPhone.
One of the biggest companies to pay tariffs based on their supply chain in China. So it's really pandering to him, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment for Apple. It's an embarrassment for Tim Cook. It should have never happened. But unfortunately, that's a political climate we're in, and it squarely earns Tim Cook some coal. He wasn't going to be on the list until that happened. Let's just be blunt. So any other last minute, we only have a couple minutes left, last minute additions to this?
Yeah, we do. I wasn't very happy with Dara Kozarush, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, the CEO of Uber, right, who took over from Travis Kalanick, who got, coal in the years past, has there was a couple of thousand counts of sexual harassment that was reported on their service in the last 2 years. I think it was 6,000 counts. They were at least transparent about that, and hopefully they're going to do something about it.
Sure.
But the real thing that bugs me is that the company has been forcing their drivers to sign essentially sign releases to say that they're contractors, not permanent employees, which affects their tax statuses and other things, which is quite negatively. I mean, I see these Uber guys, they work their butts up. They work, 12, 14 hours a day.
And they don't make much money.
No, they do not.
For as much as they work and as hard as they work, they don't make a lot of money. So taking away their permanent employee status is a huge deal, because that affords them protections and benefits and everything else. And taking that away with as hard as they're working is a huge disservice to anyone that is driving one of those cars. Yeah,
it stinks, and they've been in litigation with it. Speaking of litigation, Elon Musk. Now he may have so Elon Musk, as you know, had a kind of a Twitter feud with a British diver, and called him a pedo guy, which he it's insinuating that he likes to get too close to children.
Right.
Regardless, it was the wrong thing to do. Okay.
Yeah, this was part of the Thailand cave diver rescue thing, right?
Yeah, that was the thing, rescue in the caves or something like that. Regardless, he called the guy essentially a pedophile, or a pedo guy, which is short for pedophile.
On Twitter.
You got 10, I don't know how many followers Elon Musk has, but he's worth billions and billions of dollars. He's got, tens of millions of followers and fans. To basically just say this to some poor blue collar guy out there, and they call him a pedophile, that can actually, you could totally ruin somebody's life. Sure. Now, the court ruled in his favor and said that, it's whatever that phrase that pedo guy, the phrase that he uses is a common whatever. It's become, its power has been reduced because of its usage. Regardless, this is not how a tech CEO, somebody who's worth that kind of money and has that kind of influence, should be using against other people.
Yeah.
So it sets a terrible precedent now that rich people with money can just go ahead and abuse people on Twitter.
There was a back and forth between the two of them, and I think what the jury and the courts ended up finding was that because the diver called out Musk on international television, Musk was just responding, and it was two grown adults having a back and forth. I get that argument, but I agree with you. Calling someone a pedophile on Twitter with 20, 30 million followers, whatever it is, sets a bad precedent. And yes, the lawsuit, Musk was sued and the lawsuit was dropped. The jury found in Musk's favor. That may be fine and well, but let's act with a little bit more tact. Maybe think twice before hitting send on a tweet if you're that influential of a person. He definitely deserves a lump of coal for what happened. So I think that's a good place to stop. Hopefully the list is a little bit shorter next year and we don't have any repeats like Zuckerberg. Why don't you get off the list this year or next year? Let's make that happen. For Jason Perlow, I'm Jason Cipriani. This is Jason Squared. Make sure to check us out at zdnet.com.